Okay, so this next game was played between two former world champions who need no introduction, and it's a good example of how you can defend against an attack. And normally, the best way to do that, if you can, is by counterattacking. Instead of just defending against your opponent's threats, you create threats of your own. Often, these threats have to do with concessions your opponent has made or commitments your opponent has made by making certain attacking moves. And if this sounds a bit abstract at the moment, we'll see the concrete move and the position from that move that leads me to say that and why the counterattack should have been successful in this game. And it was to an extent. And anyway, so let's just start the game here. So we have the Sicilian defense. Okay. And this move G6 marks the dragon variation. We start with the dragon. I think it's called that because of this pawn formation. Something to do with resembling a dragon. I'm not really sure. Anyways, white plays the move bishop to e2. This move is pretty rarely seen nowadays. If we were going to talk about the state of the opening today, we would talk about the Yugoslav attack. That's really how almost everybody with white would play now against the dragon, and that starts after these moves. Castles and queen d2, and black plays knight c6, and now white has a choice between castling on the queen side immediately or playing bishop to c4 first. In any case, the idea is clear. White will castle on the queen side, and there will be an opposite side castling situation where basically whoever gets to the other player's king first will win the game. So it creates very razor-sharp positions. It's some of the sharpest positions in all of chess, stemming from the Yugoslav attack. Anyways, if we go back to the game here, this move bishop to e2 was played. And it's interesting because this move is called the classical variation. And normally the play is very slow and positional, and white is not really doing anything else but developing his pieces in a logical manner and hoping that as the game goes on and on, he'll be able to slowly inch his way up the board and kind of get advantages one by one, get small advantages one by one. These will accumulate, and somewhere black will make a mistake, and white's position will become much better than black's. And I say that because it's quite strange the way that Alekhine played this. Actually, if we take the game on for a few more moves, because he doesn't play it in the manner we would be accustomed to seeing with this variation, and we'll see what I mean in a second here. Okay, so black could have castled here. He played the move bishop to e6, and the point is that he is trying to control the d5 square, and that eventually maybe he wants to play the pawn to d5 himself, and that's a key freeing move in the Sicilian, a key pawn break. And oftentimes when black plays that move, his position, he gets an equal position or he even gets an advantageous position. So that's an important move to keep in mind. Okay, white plays the move f4. So far everything is normal with this variation. Black castles, and this is what I was talking about before, that the really consistent move for white here would just be to castle, and we would have a normal position from this opening. White would maybe play his queen to d2, and then maybe bring the rook over to d1 and maybe the bishop to f3, and you can see he's just slowly improving his pieces. And we could get maybe a plan like this, for example, and putting the knight on d5. I think that would be a normal plan in this opening. And so he plays it in a very uncharacteristic manner here for the opening. He plays the move g4, and this is the concrete move I was talking about before, this attacking move that is extremely committal, and that instead of just meekly defending here, black really has to do something about this. I mean, he can't just play, a move like, I don't know. I mean, a move like H6 to try and prevent G5. I mean, that move is playable, but I don't think it's really what we want to play here. I mean, we could easily get overrun playing like that. Another game in this line continued with the move Knight A5, and the point of this was just that Black wanted to put a piece on this C4 square. I also don't like this move, and the practice has shown that the move Black played in the game is okay. Maybe it's a slightly better position for White if he plays perfectly, as we'll see from a Fischer game that occurred 25 years after this game was played. But still, I think that this move that Black plays in the game is totally okay, and it's very consistent with Botvinnik's formulaic approach. He had a scientific approach to chess. And so if we talk about chess sort of in a way where we're saying if this happens, then you should do this, then the rule, the classical chess rule, is that you should meet an attack on the flank, on the side of the board, like this G4 move, with a push in the center. So he met G4 with D5. So very classical, very consistent with his approach to chess, and it's a good move, I think. And we should see why he's trying to why this move is taking advantage of what White is trying to do, the downsides to the move G4. Well, one of the downsides to the move G4 is that now White's kingside is very weak. I mean, that's somewhat obvious, but what's not obvious is how White is going to get his king safe. So by opening up the position, or by attempting to open up the position, Black poses White a problem in that case. And also, concretely, White's going to have some problems here. I mean, taking the pawn would be totally inconsistent with what White has been trying to do, because now Black would be able to take back, and we see that this dragon bishop, as it's called, is bearing down on the queen side. Black's knight on d5 is very strong, and taking this knight is not really going to accomplish much. I think Black would even be okay just going for an endgame here. White has this weakness over here on b2. He can't really castle, and Black's better centralized, so this would be a big mistake from White. So I will give the move e takes d5 a question mark. We can see that the move d5 is justified through other ways, other tactical means in other lines. And so that's usually how you know when a move is good. If it's justified in a number of ways, and if it sort of is consistent with a logical chess rule, like meeting a counter attack, like meeting a flank push with a counter attack in the center. We don't always want to do that, but it's always useful to consider those moves that fit in with the classical chess rules when we're playing a game. Okay, so the other move that White could play, of course, would be e5, and that makes sense. I mean, this move makes sense in terms of he's blocking this bishop now, and he's attacking this knight, and also now he's trying to get control of the square d4. So White's plan here, I think, would just be to play something like queen d2, castles on the queen side, and then he can push forward here on the king side with h4. So Black needs to be very, very quick here. And the best move here is d4. And he's trying to take advantage of some tactics here and the looseness of White's position, which is all based on this move g4. This move g4 can come back to haunt White very easily. So the first thing to note is that if White played e takes f6, and he's temporarily up a piece, and it looks bad at first, but Black can actually just calmly recapture with the bishop, and he's got a pawn for a piece so far, and he'll get another piece back because the bishop and the knight are forked by this pawn, and Black is protecting this pawn in three ways. So White is going to have to lose a piece here one way or the other. So that would be a very, very good scenario for Black here after e takes f6. The position's open and White's king is in the center also, so that would be very bad for White. If he plays the move knight takes d4, Now the tactics work out for black because he takes the knight. Okay. No matter which knight white takes, black will be fine. So if he took the knight here on f6, then once again calmly recapturing is fine. Totally good position for black. Very good position. If he takes the knight back on d4 here, now we can see that white is temporarily up a pawn, but thanks to the tactics stemming from the move knight takes g4, black is actually going to win this pawn back with a superior position. And this is why we should always look at the forcing moves in a position, because if we go back to the move e5, d4 is a very forcing move. It's counterattacking, and it's forcing white to make a big decision. We might not settle on the move immediately, and we probably shouldn't because it requires a lot of calculation to justify it. But once we've made those calculations and come to the conclusion that it's a good move, we can make that move, and then white would probably take. Then we take back here. And after playing the move d4, it's important that we should see the move knight takes g4. So we need to calculate knight takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, because after all, we are a pawn down here. And knight takes g4. And now after the move bishop takes g4, black can just take that back. And he's regained material equality. He has a better pawn structure. His king is safer. And if white takes back here, then the queen comes in, and black has a very, very nice position. If white declines to take that bishop and plays a move like queen d2, well, now his problems are that he can't castle queenside, and he has a lot of weaknesses here. And black has two bishops, so this would just be another good scenario for black. So we can see that the move d5 really forces white to find a good move, and the best move here is f5. So black's play was all geared around the square d5, even the move bishop e6 earlier in the game. And both sides are fighting for control of that square, so he's played the move d5. And now white plays the move f5 because he wants to force this bishop on e6 away from the center, away from controlling the d5 square. And now black plays a move that looks kind of retrograde, but actually it makes sense, bishop to c8. He plays this instead of bishop to d7 because he wants to be able to have the queen attack the square d5. So we'll see why in a second. He plays bishop to c8 because now after e takes d5, knight b4, black has three pieces attacking this d5 square instead of two, because if the bishop were on d7, the queen wouldn't be attacking d5. One other thing is that white really didn't have anything better than to play e takes d5. So if he played the move knight takes d5, for example, I think that move would be a mistake because black will take this, and now it's the same story as before. The bishop is attacking the pawn on b2. White's position's very loose. If he had played the move g5, this would just be a mistake because now we're going to take this again, and now this pawn is falling also. And white's pretty much busted here. Very bad position already. So he had to play the move e takes d5. Knight b4 was played. And now in this game he played the move d6, which I'm going to give a question mark. John Nunn also gives this move a question mark when he annotated this game for the book Art of Attack in Chess, which was originally by Vladimir Vukovic, and John Nunn edited it and cleaned it up. And he gave this move d6 a question mark, and I think it's just a mistake. It also doesn't fit in with the general principles of this position, which we'll talk about. But first of all, let's look at an improvement for white, and actually the best move, which is bishop to f3, which was played by Bobby Fischer. And white's idea is very simple. He wants to protect this pawn on d5 and prevent black from taking it, and then he can play queen d2, castles on the queen side, and attack the knight with a3 and things like that. So it makes a lot of sense. Black's hand is pretty much forced here. He needs to keep relying on the dynamic considerations of the position. I mean, he can't play like a slow move here. Slow moves just don't work. He's gonna get pushed off the board. So he plays g takes f5, and he is a pawn down. Okay, now he's reestablished material equality. He plays g takes f5. Um, G takes f5 here would be a mistake from white because after the move bishop takes f5, material is even, but now black is threatening to take on c2. And so that would be a big problem. And white would just be developing black's pieces for him, so that wouldn't make any sense. So instead he plays the move a3. And now once again, a meek move like knight a6 is not what black wants. I think after that move, g5 would be strong. So black has to play in a very forceful manner here. He plays. Reshevsky played the move f takes g4 in his game against Fischer. Bishop to g2, strong move. Knight a6 now. Queen d3, so he's preparing to castle on the queen side like we saw. And also he's preventing black from developing this piece to f5. So black, rightly so, tried to open up the position with pawn to e6. And white castled on the queen side here. It might have been worth considering the move pawn to d6 here. Although I think knight d5 would probably be strong there. Temporarily sacrificing a pawn in order to try and take the pawn on d6. There probably is a better move also. But that move would be worth considering anyway. Okay, but Fischer played the move castles on the queen side and still retained an advantage. Now black took this back. h3, a very strong move. So he's trying to use the rook here and the queen here to get a checkmate on h7 by opening up the h-file. Okay, of course, black wants to keep the lines closed around his king. After all, he's moved the g-pawn. So his king is already going to be a little bit loose already. Okay, white is going to try and take this pawn eventually. Queen d6 was played in order to try and protect the pawn over here on g3. Okay, bishop takes d5, knight e takes d5, knight takes d5, king h8. And yeah, black's position is just very loose here. White has a big time initiative. And I think actually even a move like bishop d4, this would be pretty strong, I think. Because once that bishop goes, that's the defender of black's king. Of course, black can't take this knight. He would lose his queen. Check. And the queen is gone. So I think bishop d4 would be very strong here too. In any case, Fischer played the move bishop to f4. And queen g6 was played. And now he played the move queen d2, which looks good. Queen f3 was also very strong. And white just has a big initiative, big attack here. So I'm pretty sure that black's play could be improved at some point, because I don't think that the move 10 d5 is a mistake, but some improvements are needed to avoid that situation like what happened to Reshevsky. Okay, well, Alekhine didn't go for that continuation. You know, his style was very I would say he was a very chaotic player. I mean, he liked very chaotic positions. He definitely liked to make things very unclear, so he played the move d6. In that game, it actually pays off because black played the move queen takes d6. But had he played the move e takes d6, I think he would have gotten a nice position here. Okay, well, the first thing is that after a3, this was the idea. Knight here, and then g5, this was the idea of the whole thing. And the point is that if black plays a meek move like knight d7, that move would be a big mistake, because after f6, and this is a common theme that we see in fianchetto positions, if you allow your bishop to get shut in by these pawns over here, you often will just have no shot. I mean, because you're basically just down a piece, and white's just dominating that position. So got to be very careful there. But once again, it goes back to the counter-attacking aspects of the game, which is that, you know, white's king is in the middle, and he has some pieces that can be attacked. So rook e8 would be a very strong move. And there's a lot of analysis here, but the point is that if white takes this knight, black can probably get away with taking this bishop, because if he takes, here. White is temporarily up a piece, but now his king is going to come under a pretty strong attack, I think. So that line is what justifies the move rook e8. And yeah, like I said, there's a lot of analysis here, but the point is that, Black's playing very dynamically. He might sacrifice a piece for 2 pawns or something to keep the king in the middle. He's not going to get his bishop shut in on g7, and he's really fighting here. And that's really thematic, because the move d6, it does break a principle, which is that he's trying to open the position when his king is still in the middle. And if we can think about it in that way, and it's all the more suspicious or strange, rather, why Botvinnik didn't take this with the pawn, because after all, he was a very scientific player. He obviously understood the principle of keeping a position closed when your king is in the center, or conversely, if you have a development advantage and your opponent's king is in the center, you should open the position up. So it's strange that he didn't play this move. I think maybe it was just that there were some pretty long and complicated and daunting lines to calculate if you're at the board there, stemming from here and having to find the move rook e8, because it probably will contain some elements of sacrifice. Obviously this line does, but probably some other lines do too. Yeah, and anyways, I don't think we have to look at the rest of the game for much longer, because after queen takes d6, the move bishop c5 was played, which is a strong move. Okay, queen takes d1 would be not the best. White would take with the rook, so he's getting another piece into the game, and then the knight on b4 is attacked, and if he takes on c2, that would be a terrible mistake, because king d2 will trap the knight, so black would just lose the game there. And if he played the move knight c6, well, now white still has an initiative even in the endgame. After g5, knight d7, and f6, he's continuing to go after black's pieces and trying to win some material there, and I think he would have a very, very good position there. So after this move, bishop to c5, black decided to keep the queens on the board, which is of course very logical, given that white's king is in the middle. Okay, Alekhine played rook f1 in order to try and dislodge the queen. There's not much else that white can really do here, it looks like to me, because black is threatening to open up the position and white's king is still in the middle. It's the same story as before. So he played rook f1, and okay, it forces black to take this, no other move, and now white will win this knight, so he's up a knight for just a pawn. Okay, but and now once again, black cannot sit by and just wait. He has to try and find a solution to this position, because he's down a piece after all. So he played the move knight takes g4, taking advantage of the fact that white's king is in the middle. Okay, first of all, he's threatening to play queen g3 and then queen e3 after the king moves to d2. Well, excuse me. He's threatening to play queen g3, and then after the queen moves to king moves to d2, he can play queen e3 and go for a repetition, or he can try for more with rook d8 check. That would also be possible. In any case, this knight really has to be taken. And now the point was, after queen g3 check, white has several options, but none of them are particularly appealing. He could play the move king to d2. Of course, the problem with that is he's going to lose his queen, so that would probably be a mistake. Looks like a mistake. Doesn't get enough for the queen, maybe. The second option is to play king here. This would be a clear mistake, though, due to the tactics, because, okay, we've gotten the first piece back with queen takes g4 check, and now wherever the king goes, black will take the bishop here, so he just has a winning position there. Okay, so that left him with the game option, which was rook f2. But now Botvinnik had seen that after the move queen g1 check, white really has nothing better than to repeat, because if he plays king e2, it's the same story that we just saw, check, and then there will be some block, and then or some move from the king, and then that bishop's going to get taken, and that will be the end of the game. And if he plays the move king d2, okay, now the rook is gone, and on the next move, queen f4 check will be played, and the bishop will be gone, so that's also going to lose. So he has to repeat the position, and we just got this repetition, and it was declared a draw by 3-move repetition. All right, so I hope that game highlights some important counter-attacking concepts and what you can do if your opponent's trying to attack you, and how you can take advantage of the attacking committal moves that your opponent has made.